to another Serve series this Friday. I am so happy to be here with Juan Carlos Cuellar, also known as JC Cuellar. He's a longtime friend, and he is a Facebook ads master. We're so happy to have you here today.
Hi, Kristin. Thanks for having me back, and I really enjoy being invited to this. I absolutely love sharing just some tips and tricks that I know just to help everyone with their Facebook ads.
So Facebook ads are something that are so important to people, and I hear a lot of clients ask detailed questions about them, about really how to make the most of them, how to understand how they work for their small business. And so our goal today is to really share with everybody who's watching some actionable tips and tricks that pertain directly to Facebook ads. And we're going to walk through 3 key points that you're going to share. You actually have done marketing for several major brands down in Belize where you're located. Right now you're working with Tropic Air. Tell us a little bit about your background when it comes to digital marketing before we jump into those tips and tricks.
Yeah, sure. So I worked for quite a number of years with an internet marketing company based in that area in southern Belize called Natural Light Productions. And through there is kind of when I was there when kind of the beginnings of social media started to come up. And I was the one that managed the website for the Belize Tourism Board. And really it was handling that website and seeing what else, how social media was kind of evolving, that I realized, you know what, this is a nice way to kind of pivot, but while still staying within this certain field, so to speak, of online, because I develop and design websites. And so I made my move from Natural Light and I moved up to the city, and I pitched myself to Bone and Bowen. Specifically, the brand was Pelican Bear. And they didn't, I'm a huge fan of the brand, I'm a huge fan of the beer. And I saw a huge opportunity to actually make their presence online via social media. So that's kind of where I really began to dig into it at Pelican Bear. And then after about 3 years with them, Tropic Air was looking for someone in the field. They were realizing the importance of their online presence and the need to capitalize on that. And so they headhunted me, and I'm in now 4 years, I think it is, with Tropic Air. And so pretty much I handle their online, everything online for them. So that's design development of the website, maintenance of that, implementing marketing strategies for online purposes. That's not just with Facebook, but it's also with Google Ads. It's and maintaining their social media presence as well. So essentially, that's what it is that I do on a daily basis for them, and I also do it for a select few other clients as well.
So it's wonderful that you get to have that 30,000 foot view, and no pun intended with Tropic Air, because I realize it's an airline, but at the same time, you have a chance to understand what a long-term strategy in Facebook ads is all about, and really the efficacy of it and the best practices that not only larger brands can do with Facebook ads, but also you mentioned you work with smaller clients too who have mom and pop style businesses or who are solo entrepreneurs, so that you have these wonderful ways to be able to share with Facebook ads. And we are really interested in helping you, our audience members today, feel like you have confidence and competence behind Facebook ads. So let's jump right in.
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, right, yeah. So basically, yes, you're right. And what I did notice is that, and some people seem to miss that aspect of it when dealing with big brands. The difference between what a big brand can do and what a small mom and pop can do, really, if you were to look at it, was down to budget. How much money they can necessarily throw at it. So what people fail to realize is that big brands also have a budget that needs to fit within a certain space. And so what I got to learn very well is how to maximize the most out of that budget, regardless as to what that budget is. And in Facebook, when doing specifically Facebook ads, realize that there are a lot of little things you can do from onset right on through to while the ad is running to see how best you can leverage every cent in your dollar that is put towards the budget of a Facebook ad. So one of the things, for example, and again, this is across the board, doesn't matter the brand or anything, it's really specific, has to do with ad dimensions. Now, how I look at it is like this. it is very important to understand right off the bat how social media primarily is consumed by your audience. And the vast majority of that has to do with mobile devices. And
Like,
so that, exactly. Exactly. I'm doing this on my iPad, so mobile devices is the primary source for consumption of Facebook, of social media, and especially Facebook as well. I mean, it's massively different, more than that of, let's say, for example, your desktop or your laptop. And so once you understand that initially, you get to understand then why Facebook has suggestions as to what's the best dimensions in order to do Facebook ads. And so they have their different categories as well. They have their Facebook feed, they have their carousel, the right side column, in-stream video ads, marketplace ads, etc., stories, and that sort of thing. And each one of those, while some of them may overlap as far as dimensions are concerned, each one of those tend to have their specific dimensions. Take, for example, stories. Their stories, Facebook stories, are vertical, so they're 1080 by 1920. Versus, let's say, within the feed, you can get a 4:5 ratio or a 1:1 ratio, which would be a square, depending whether that picture or photo comes with description or without description. Changes also the dimensions of it, and that is key in understanding how best to deliver the ads to your audience. So I guess you can start off by asking what your objective is, and then from there figure out where best to place your ads. But another way to look at it is look at it like this: pay attention to your own feed within Facebook when you're scrolling. Pay attention to ads that you pause at or click on, and see what about those attract you and why those work for you, and you'll see that those will work for your audience as well. So something that people tend to fail to realize is that they'll get a graphic designer to, let's say, do an ad for them, and typically the ad would, let's say, be a letter size 8.5 by 11, and when you look at the flyer, the business owner is like, oh man, this looks great, this looks wonderful, this looks impactful, and it works great for a flyer for that medium. But then they think that they can take that graphic that's on their screen that they're looking at, perhaps, let's say, at a 24-inch monitor, 30-inch monitor on your screen, and they think they can translate that into a Facebook ad. It says, take that and make that a Facebook ad. But when it gets crunched down and then you start looking at it on your phone, you realize that that really isn't the best layout, best image size to capture your audience. And you will see it in ads. I see it in ads when I scroll by. I see this ad that I barely can see. If I have to pinch and zoom to kind of see what they're saying, then they've lost me already, kind of situation. And so the great thing is, like I said, is that Facebook has its resources online on their Facebook page, where they tell you, here are the best practices for doing your ads, and under that category there is ad dimensions, and it can really drill down as to the type of ads you have. That's how I can look at it.
I think you bring up a really great point, is that for people who run ads, or they have a small budget to run something and they have a quick promotion, sometimes they do that terrible thing called the spray and pray, right? Where they throw up an ad and they pray that it works. And you're saying right now that the intention with which we sort of approach Facebook ads should really come by thinking about the user experience.
Yes.
That first comes with understanding that the majority of users are going to be on a mobile device.
Right.
And the second thing is thinking about what appeals to your specific audience, because that's a really good point you brought up. So think about these things before you decide to place an ad, to understand how your message is getting consumed and the audience that is consuming that information, what really attracts them. So taking that information and helping that to inform the process of creating an ad. I love these points because it's really true. We want people, especially you mentioned earlier, like no matter if you're a large brand or small brand, everybody's got a budget. Everybody wants to maximize that budget. So every person that starts out successfully on Facebook, and from what you're telling me, approaches their ad creative. And when we use the word creative, we're talking about your photos, the words that you're using. But they approach it with this kind of intention. I love these 2 points. I think it's great in terms of this help. You mentioned something else where Facebook walks you through. Like, tell me a little bit about that process. I know I've done ads, but Facebook really walks you through this and says to you, like, here are the sizes you need,
Right.
and here's what this process looks like. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So when you go into the building of an ad section, if Facebook kind of gives you the guide, like, okay, what is this ad for? What is your objective for this ad? And as you move through your selection process, Facebook then says, okay, based upon what it is you're telling me, we have these options of where we can show your ad. And based upon that, these are the sizes that we're suggesting to you to use. And what again, regarding back, which goes right back to the budget, is that if you make it easy, so to speak, for an ad to be served by Facebook, what you don't realize is you spend less on that ad versus you make an ad.
Wait,
that
can
is
you
more
say?
difficult.
Can you say? I'm totally interrupting you. Can you say that one more time, please?
Right.
The people in the back need to.
Okay, right. So
Yeah.
if you give an ad to Facebook that makes it easy for them to serve to the audience, then you spend less on that ad versus bucking the system. So if you do an ad that is just at a dimension that is not ideal or optimum, Facebook is like, okay, no problem. I'll take your ad and I'll serve it up. So let's say your budget is, $1 a day, which is the least you can spend on $1 a day, right? Depending on the particular ad. So Facebook is like, all right, no problem, we'll take that. But how much of that dollar are we going to use then to serve up your ad? If you had followed one of these particular suggestions by Facebook, your actual spend per impression or per click, depending on what it is you're going for, if you had followed the rules, so to speak, or the optimum sizes, would be less than if you had not done so. And sometimes that can be the difference between 100, maybe multiple hundreds of close to 1,000 impressions based upon that one ad. And if you can get to more eyeballs with $1 than you would with the same dollar, then why not opt for that? Why not go the route of saying, okay, you're suggesting a 1920 by 1080 photo or a 1080 by 1920 photo for my Facebook story? That makes sense, because think of it. Why? I just did LaterCon. That they had that that thing going on, and the person was like, if you're on Instagram, why would you tell me to rotate my phone to watch a story? Because that's what you think a video should be showing at. If the medium is vertical, then serve up a vertical video, because
Right.
there are other people that are wanting your attention and they're serving vertical video to make it easy. But all of a sudden now you gotta turn it. I mean, you're adding hurdles in between you and what it is that your audience wants, and you don't want
Right.
that.
That is the truth. And we talk a lot about the path to purchase, which for any business owner, whether that's an event you're hosting or a product you're selling, we need to clear that path.
Yeah. Right.
Even for we need to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Even for intelligent users, right?
Yeah.
When we're scrolling through our phone, something else turns on in our brain and we're just keep going. So we don't want to have to turn our phone sideways. We don't want to have to click things like turn sound on now.
Right.
It should automatically play all of those things. So that's a great point. It's like making sure that we're following those rules, and not only is the user experience going to be better, but more potential users are going to be seeing that ad. I love that piece of advice. It's great.
Sure.
It's great. Talk to me, once we have these ads up and running, I don't know if we want to jump ahead too quickly, but
you come back before. So another thing about the ads, you take into consideration, let's say, ad dimension. Another thing you can take into consideration is the copy that you're putting on that ad.
Yep.
Now, up until a week, maybe, there was this whole 20% rule that Facebook had, which essentially was they didn't want you to use more than 20% of your ad space on the graphic for text. They even had a link to a grid where you can upload your image, and it would tell you, it will flag it right there. It's over 20%. We suggest you don't do that. it will cost more to run the ad. It didn't necessarily outright reject it. But within the last week, all of a sudden on my social media feeds that I follow, things just started going ding, 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 and the big news was 20% text is dead. Exactly, and everybody's like, hooray! And in the initial reaction to that, people were like, oh, great, so I don't have to worry about doing that, I don't have to worry about doing this. But I read this article, I think his name is John Loomer, I think his name is. He had a good point regarding text on using body copy on your ad. It really just goes back to good design sense and what works versus what doesn't work. Not just because you no longer have to adhere to the 20% rule that Facebook had as far as putting body copy on your image for your ad. Does that mean that you have to then break that rule? Again, right, exactly. It again, look back at ads that work for you when you're going through your feed, where you stop at the ads that you react to. You'll notice that they are not necessarily jumbled up with a lot of text. It's a little catchphrase, it's a little tagline. It's something to grab your attention, and then you move on. You click, and then you move on to where it is that they want you to go to. And I think the same principle applies that what you would do for yourself. There's no reason to add, but you have to learn, I guess, to learn how to write body copy that is concise, precise, and gets the message across. And if you can do that in less words than, let's say, using half of your graphic for your ad as body copy, then, you want to put less hurdles between you and what it is, the path to purchase, I guess, is what they're doing.
Absolutely. And I think this comes back to the point you talked about earlier. You just mentioned an idea about good graphic sense, right? We want to make sure that our ads look good to every kind of user. And I'm going to admit something. I might be of the age right now where I might have bifocals sitting on top of my head as we speak, right?
Yes.
And you have to think about your ideal audience, right? If they're on the phone and all of a sudden they're having to do this in order to be able to read your ad, they're going to swipe right by, right?
Yeah.
So again, the point you brought up earlier, user experience comes into this, as well as good graphic design. And let's face it, people are more attracted to colors, to pictures of people, to those kinds of things than they are necessarily looking at words. It's not that you can't use wording on top of your graphics, but again, thinking about that user experience. It's interesting that Facebook has lifted this challenge and lifted this restriction. I have heard, and maybe you can reflect a little bit on this, that it's still a really good idea to keep things minimal because you're just going to have more audience engagement overall. So kind of holding that rule is right.
Certainly, and their text, the text restriction they had before, as far as the body copy on the ad itself, but then they also have suggestions as to when your title for the ad, how many characters need to be in there, and then the description for your ad, how many characters to be in there. And time again, you'll find out that short, concise posts perform better than if you have a paragraph or two, trying to, as far as an ad is concerned. They're literally seconds that you're dealing with when people are scrolling through their timeline. You want to capture their attention, and you want to give them a reason to click through. You want them to stop, yes. You want them to look, recognize, click. You don't necessarily want to go like, okay, we got a short novel here. I got to go through to bring your message across. That's not what you want. You want best practices is what you're looking for in order to achieve. And it goes right back again to how much you will get out of your ad spend out of that dollar.
Right.
So they'll be like, oh, okay, people are responding to this ad. They like this ad. We can serve it up some more, and you're actually ending up spending less on the dollar, and getting more out of your ad than you would, let's say, if an ad that was kind of chock full of text.
So it sounds like the bottom line here is follow the rules, show a great graphic, and keep it short and sweet.
Yeah, keep it short and sweet.
Right. And that's the one challenge that we all have as business owners. We want to get all of the information out. We're like, and let's add this in. there is a time and place for that. It is not in your Facebook ad, right?
Right.
The time and place for all of that is on your webpage or
Right.
you're in real life messaging with clients. So
Right.
this is a great tip. And I think that, again, even though those restrictions are now lifted, really coming back to good design sense. And I know a lot of us can think about good design sense and just taking a look at what are we attracted to? What are the things that we see that, and you brought that point up earlier, it's like, what is it that I like to stop and look at and incorporate some of those ideas into your own advertising?
Absolutely. You know what? It's funny because all these things kind of you end up talking about our audience, which kind of gives a segue also to another point I'd like to bring up as far as ads are concerned. Ads are never get them done and send them out into the wild kind of situation. It's not like, okay, good, I'm done with my ads. Whew, check that off my list. Moving on to my next thing kind of situation. Understand that there's money on the table. There's money that you're spending once your ad is live. There's so much you can learn from a campaign during and after, and it requires you to be active in that. So what I'm getting at, for example, is your metrics. Which is huge. Now, some people might get a little bit antsy and go like, "Oh, but the metrics," and it's like the matrix. It really isn't that complicated. Facebook has done a lot as far as updating their backend, and looking at insights, so that more people can understand in a dashboard and at a glance how their ad is performing, and you can pay keen attention to just a few things as that goes along.
This is a key point here, is that you can pay attention. They make it very easy for you to read, and I would love to. And also, you can't set it and forget it. Like, you can't.
Right.
You have to make sure that you're paying attention. So, let's dig in. Let's dig into how you take a look at those metrics and how you get the most juice for the squeeze.
Right. So for example, there's this thing called a relevance score, which which pretty much tells you how relevant the ad that you're doing caters to your audience. There's also a section regarding basically your demographic. Who is this ad reaching? So you've paid attention to the ad size. You've, let's say, done a couple different ad sizes. You've done a couple different ad copies, and you've loaded up in one campaign what essentially are 4 ads, let's say. So you have A, B, C, and D ads. So what we're doing is A/B testing essentially. And you load up the ads and you give it a couple of days. And third day you kind of go into the metrics and you say, let's see how my ads are doing, because they are performing still. And you look at it and you realize, you know what? I did something with ad A and B versus C and D, because A and B are outperforming C and D. There are more people engaging, or there are more people that are being reached with my ads in A and B. So immediately, one of the things you can do is to simply say, well, if 2 ads aren't performing out of the same, and there are 4 ads in the same budget, pause those 2 ads.
Right.
Or how can I adjust these last 2 ads to see and borrow from ads A and B as to how they're performing and implement those. But very quickly, you'll look at your metrics and see, okay, let's say your demographic is, a 40 to 65 demographic, and is mostly male, and you realize that one of your ads is actually reaching that demographic. Then those other ads that aren't performing or reaching outside the demographic aren't relevant to your audience, and it's not important to you either. So concentrate then on that demographic. You might notice that based upon the metrics of the ad, that there's little tweaks that you can do, and then you can react to it in what I like to call real time. You can react to it before your campaign ends. You can adjust your campaign to better suit who your audience is, or how it's reaching your audience, and therefore your budget of $1 a day for 30 days, for your $30 budget, you will get more out of that by using ads that are performing well versus spending money on ads that aren't converting or aren't reaching who it is you intended to reach.
I learned something from you when I first heard you speak at the Belize, the Digital Marketing Summit, and
Right.
you talked about saying, planning when you're doing these advertisements, plan for 2 different ads running on the same budget, or 3 or 4, and let them go for 3 or 4 days and see which one is performing best. Because you're going to, if you make that plan at the initial part of your ad spend, then you're going to have an idea of what the right audience is, the right demographic, right? Who's responding to what, and then you can make sure that that ad that you're putting out there is really the one that's best. So you could substantiate that and say, okay, here are ads A and B, they're doing the best, we're going to keep the budget going towards that. And then you can further refine that.
Yeah.
And maybe A is performing better over the 2-week haul, and you can turn off B. But I think that was a great piece of information that I think a lot of people go in thinking that they're going to do one ad and they're going to see how it goes, and maybe it's mezzo,
right.
And then they feel like it's a failure.
Right. So there's this thing, like, we had discussions last time where I said, I don't know how relevant this will be for the audience listening, but for us in Belize, you have your fisherman, and he heads out in the morning, and so he's got his net, and he casts his net, at this spot, and then you realize there's no sprat or shrimp here, there's no bait. So the fisherman isn't going to throw there again. He isn't going to repeat that process. He's going to go like, okay, no fish here, move the boat. Where are the birds, or wherever it may be? All right, let's try this spot. Cast his net wide again, and he hits it. And so then you realize, okay, this is my spot. This is my audience. This is, my fish. and that's where I'm going to throw my net. And that's the exact same thing we need to be doing with our ads. Our ads may be initially broad, and then you realize, oh yeah, I found my sweet spot between this age and this age, particularly female, and this type of graphic they're responding to. Just go right back and keep hitting that spot and get the absolute most out of your budget for that. Because it makes no sense, like the fisherman, to be fishing where the fish aren't.
That's right. And I love this analogy. So for those of you who are watching today, take it from JC and Belize, fish where the fish are, right? Just because you like one spot because it's pretty and it's nice, if the fish aren't biting, move, right?
Yeah.
If the wind stops, row, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
No, it brings it to life. I live on the coast of Maine, so that analogy is perfect, and I think that a lot of our audience will completely understand it. I love that. So that's a really helpful, not only mindset, so not a qualitative way to enter the doing good ads, but really a quantitative way that you can back up by looking at the back end of your ads and saying, who's performing well? Where is that performing well? I want to ask you a quick question as we're talking about metrics. Talk to me a little bit about the Facebook pixel, because I know this is something especially that small business owners who are looking at doing their own ads, this might trip them up a little bit. And I want to hear your advice about this.
So again, the Facebook pixel is I find when I bring it up to customers, they get frightened and they think it's this massive thing of coding and backend, and I keep telling them, I'm like, it really isn't that complicated. And again, I really applaud Facebook for taking you through the motions for that. So essentially, it's just one little bit of code, short little bit of code that you either get your webmaster or whoever's managing your website, or even yourself. Because trust me, if you're in the back end of your website, I'm pretty sure you can figure this out. It's very easy to do. And you add that code to your website. And what that essentially does is you're giving Facebook huge opportunity for yourself to see who's visiting your site. So who visits your site, what age they are, what preferences they may have, where are they visiting from, all this information. How long are they on your website? Are they viewing one particular product more than others? All of that information just gets sucked into this little pixel, into this little bit of code that Facebook then spits out for you on the back end for your ad section in your Facebook page. And it is a wealth of information because it really helps with that guessing game of where to fish. So you look at it and you go like, oh, okay, all right. So I have a particular, bottle of wine or device or product that people are just really interested in or keep coming back to kind of situation. I can do a quick ad on that and see if I can sell up my stock kind of situation, it really gives you insight as to have a far better understanding of your audience, which then really helps you in who to target and where to target, to then come right back. We go full 360 to then understand how it is you can get the absolute most out of your budget. So rather than spending money trying to figure it out, more of your budget is geared towards people are visiting your site, are spending X amount of time and are visiting particular products, and it can roll over even into remarketing ads to them and all of that, because it even carries into if you have a website that has carts as well, shopping cart. It sees people have loaded up something into your shopping cart, but they didn't go through with the purchase. You can even target them, and you get all that information from the Facebook pixel you install on your website.
It's worth the time. And I think that the way that you just broke that down, this is really an opportunity to do market research. It's really a chance to have more information that helps to inform you make a better decision about how you're going to spend that precious dollars that are part of your budget. So taking the time to make sure that you install that Facebook pixel, now whether it's you or again it's a webmaster that you are in contact with, it doesn't take a tremendous amount of time, and even for the small business owner, you can get quick help with that. That really can help deliver that information that's so incredibly valuable. Because again, this tool, just coming back to the original idea we're talking about, Facebook ads can be so powerful. I think that you were the one that originally told me, you're like, there is no other place online where you can get this big a bang for your buck in terms of advertising. Right?
Really, yeah. It really is. In a lot of ways, it helps to level the playing field. It really does. Especially if you pay attention and you do these tips and tricks and you hone in on who your demographic is, your audience is. It really does level the playing field between you and, let's say, another bigger brand, for example, with a bigger budget. I mean, granted, there's always bigger budgets, but it's really how much you can get out of what it is you have and what that return is for you.
Got it. I love that tip. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we really hope that this empowers you guys who are watching this today to take that step, like not only do the ads, but add that Facebook pixel in so that you can get that kind of information and really make the most out of the budget that you have. So we are rounding out our time here, and this is a wealth of information. Tell us one last tip and trick that you want us to end the day with today.
Sorry. So you can try finding resources to kind of help you with this. Facebook itself has a wealth of information as far as resources go, but maybe how they present it isn't always works for you. A resource I use is YouTube. Huge resource for that. And one particular channel I subscribe to and I really read up on the videos is Social Media Examiner. They do an awesome conference every year. Thankfully, I've gotten the opportunity to go to, but they offer a wealth of information with their blogs, as well as there's just short videos as to how to do things. And they have playlists, so they have a Facebook playlist, and you can really drill down into a lot of how-to things. They talk about your metrics, they talk about the Facebook pixel, they talk about how to install that, they talk about best practices for ads. Really, YouTube is a massive resource, and you don't have to necessarily follow Social Media Examiner, though I would suggest you follow them. But there are others out there that may fit how it is you would gather information as to how best to do these practices, and keep in mind that this is very dynamic. Like I said, a week ago, we had this 20% rule, so to speak, on Facebook, and that changed, boom, which turned over things. And then today or tomorrow, Zuckerberg might be like, let's throw another curveball. But these
Happens. It happens.
right, but
Yeah.
but these resources like Social Media Examiner, they're on top of it, and they really help you keep abreast as to what's current, what works, and what doesn't.
So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Social Media Examiner is a fantastic resource. I know that it's one, JC, that you use quite a bit and that you reference to share tips and tricks with people. And the way that they talk about social media management is one that's incredibly approachable for every level of business. So thank you for that resource. I just want to do a quick recap of everything that you've shared with us today because it's such valuable information. And I really hope that for those of you who are watching, you feel like you can walk into doing your own Facebook advertising with strength and with confidence. And if you're not doing it yourself, that you feel better informed about the conversations that you will have with the people who are running your ads for you, because we want you to feel like this is a really positive, not even just feeling that it's positive, but seeing those positive results in a real quantitative way. So we talked about making sure that you're following the sizes in terms of the creative that you're creating. You're making sure that you're putting your ads on the channels that your audience are on. So making sure that if you're going on Instagram, you want to attract that audience that's on Instagram. If you're going on Facebook, that you go to that particular audience that's on Facebook. We talked about making sure that you maximize your budget, that you test out 1, 2, or 3 ads against one another, and make that a part of your plan of action. So that you can see which one is performing best. And we also talked about making sure that you take the time to install that Facebook pixel so that you can gather that information and understand your audience better. Because I know for those of you who are doing business and we're doing business in real life face-to-face, you already know what that face-to-face community looks like. Expanding into the online world, that's going to be a little bit different, and you need to gather information in a little bit different way. The best point I think that you made today is making sure on your metrics that you're fishing where the fish are. That if you're performing best in the audience that is part of your business, that's where you put your focus.
Yeah.
I really hope that you guys take these tips to heart. And JC, I want to thank you. If people are interested in getting in touch with you, how can they get in touch and ask questions?
So my Twitter handle is at JC Cuellar. I'm also available on Instagram at JC Cuellar as well. And I don't have a Facebook page, but that's fine. You could still find me, Juan Carlos Cuellar, on Facebook. But yeah, Twitter and Instagram, that'd be easy to just kind of have a conversation going. But I'm always willing to give tips and tricks and help out.
I really appreciate that. And if you also follow JC on Twitter and Instagram, he also is a phenomenal photographer. So it'd be really a joy to follow his work. Thank you so much for coming today, for helping our audience, for giving these wonderful tips and tricks. We are going to be coming back with JC again to talk about all things Facebook Messenger and automated messages, and which is another wonderful thing that you can be empowered to do. So we look forward, JC, to having you back. We wish everybody a great day. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.